That is a pretty significant
Look, you'll have
in terms of at least a promise.
Fine, but this has been debated before. You need a special purpose vehicle because UAE doesn't have the ability to say put up highways. They don't want to go around collecting tolls. How do you bring that investment in? Even the previous government, I know, was talking of special purpose vehicles which enable this money to come in where they get fixed return, or they'll be looking for sovereign guarantees. You know the problem we had with Etisalat, their telecommunication company, which lost money in the 2G scam. And till now, I'm sure this must have been taken up by them with the Prime Minister. How we are going to, because for them it is their sovereign investment. Now, you can't tell them that you are playing the market, you've lost money. So it's more complicated than it appears, but there are possibilities.
Okay,
there are possibilities, and we'll have to have new ways of dealing with them.
Ambassador Parthasarathy, so what has changed?
Two things, let me say, on two issues. One, I agree with Casey. Ultimately, whether it's UAE, given the political relationship now evolving, and these monarchies function according to what the ruler wants, if we set up the right environment, that investment will come. There will be no political inhibitions, not worrying about Pakistan or China or anybody else. The money will come, but that depends on us. And he is right that Etisalat deal and that 2G scam ruined our image in the UAE. Casey is right. The other thing is about the domestic issues and foreign policy. You know, I think Casey and I belong to a different generation. We belong to a generation where Mr. Narasimha Rao sent Mr. Vajpayee on a very important mission to the UN Human Rights Commission when for the first time Pakistan was trying to get Kashmir brought to the UN. Mr. Vajpayee led it. Salman Khurshid as Minister of State was just a member of that delegation. So I think we need to look back. I hope all political parties do this, on that era and what the first generation of the leadership in India bequeathed to them, and and use it and utilize it and go by it.
I think those are very wise words actually to end on, and I don't know if the BJP and the Congress are listening to that, because the political discourse just seems to be so bitter that there isn't even an acknowledgement of appreciation on either side. Abhishek Singhvi, last comment from you on that particular point, because it's hard today to even get the Congress, for instance, to acknowledge that yes, Narendra Modi had a good trip to the UAE and this is a breakthrough visit.
On the contrary, Nidhi, three quick points in ending. First, here I was openly in your program endorsing and welcoming the initiatives taking further the continuity in foreign policy as a very important investment destination to India from outside. I said so very clearly. Second, there is a consensus of 3 out of 4. I started that point, and I am very glad to hear complete endorsement that when you speak ill about your domestic squabbles abroad, you actually defame and harm yourself much more than anybody else. People laugh at you. I made that point, and I believe there is broad agreement minus the BJP. Third, I think on the specifics there is one error, and that's what I want to end on. Look at the figures of investment from this region from 1998 to 2004. Look at the figures of investment from 2004 to 2010. Look at growth rates or totals or absolutes. In no way is the point the BJP is making validated, except of course that Mr. Modi is very good at hyping it. It is not validated that investments were abysmally low during our time, did not grow from this region, and that they were historic highs during the 98 to 2003. I have always said that there is always scope for galloping increase each time each government comes. You can and should increase. That is a different issue. But to suggest that we were abysmal in actual statistical terms, the figures show otherwise. Any figure check annual growth or the over 10-year period compared to the 6-year period will show that.
No, so Nalin, I'll give you the last word on this, and I would like to ask you whether the BJP would heed the advice of two experienced diplomats, and particularly what Ambassador Parthasarathy said when he gave the example of Narasimha Rao sending Mr. Vajpayee to the UN Human Rights Commission. Can that ever be repeated in this country?
No, a lot could be repeated. It takes two to tango. It can't be a one-way street, and we can now, this debate will get digressed. So let's not move down there. There have been periods of cooperation also, there's no doubt. There have also been periods of breakdown. And I think domestically also nothing remains today a secret. After all, the world is connected by the instant. So what happens here travels internationally. When you run down the Prime Minister in Parliament, outside Parliament, it's all there. So I mean, nothing is now hidden. We live in an open world. My second comment was in terms of, maybe on a slightly light mood, the Congress party at one point had given this country the Hindu rate of growth. We know what that was in the 50s and the 60s. I somehow get this feeling throughout the UPA we had a hidden rate of growth. Somehow nobody, whether it's investors, whether it's ordinary people, middle class, whether it's the rich, whether it's anybody, felt this country was galloping. But somehow the Congress has always felt there. Perhaps a good starting point would be that, yes, maybe things were not good, they are improving, and we welcome the improvement in the national interest. We'll talk our politics and find out the middle point on that too.
All right. Well, I have to leave it at that as far
as... One sentence, for 8 of those 10 years, our lowest growth rate was higher than their highest in 6 years.
And I will continue to debate that separately with the two of you again and again. I have to leave it at that on the UAE. I'd like to thank Ambassador KC Singh too, who has to go for another program. But we'd like to move on, though, to Pakistan, where there is another ceasefire violation that is taking place again this evening in the Balakot sector. Pakistan also lodging another protest with India today, accusing India of ceasefire violations. Now, these violations have only increased since the two prime ministers met in Ufa in Russia in July and agreed to have NSA-level talks, which are supposed to take place this Sunday in Delhi. For people living along the line of control in Poonch in particular, there is only deep fear. There were 6 civilians that were killed over the weekend, and many just cannot go back home.
A distraught Mohammad Sharif showing us the damage caused to his house by the Pakistani shelling here at the LOC in Poonch. For the last 4 days, his home has come under intense fire. He was lucky to survive after a splinter hit him and injured his right arm. The 25-year-old is homeless as live shells are still inside his home and outside in his maize fields.
हमें किसी ने आज तक अभी पूछा नहीं मेरे को कि तुझे क्या प्रॉब्लम है, कुछ क्या नहीं है, तू जिंदा है मुर्दा है, क्यों मैं बच्चों को बहुत मुश्किल से उस दिन मैंने बचा लिए, तो बचाते हुए मेरे को थोड़ी सी छीनी लग गई.
With things quiet on the LOC today, villagers here in Sauzia try to visit their homes to see the magnitude of damage. People say it's deceptive calm and they don't know when shells will land again. Several hamlets of Sauzia have literally become unsafe because dozens of live shells are scattered in the fields and abandoned homes. 75-year-old Noor Mohammed blames government for not doing enough to protect their lives and property.
इसलिए हम सोचना क्या ये भी हमारा हिंदुस्तान है, यहाँ पर भी हम लोग हिंदुस्तान के नागरिक हैं, यहाँ पर क्यों नहीं बंदोबस्त क्यों नहीं हो रहा?
Unlike in other border areas, the government has failed to build underground bunkers in all the forward areas of Poonch where people can take shelter.
तो हम एडमिशन से यही कहते हैं कि हमें रहने की जगह चाहिए जहां पर हमारे बच्चे और हम रह सकते हैं और इस फायर से बच सकेंगे.
It is the constant fear and uncertainty the people of this area are living in. While there was no major ceasefire violation today, people here say it is a deceptive calm. They are asking the question why the government is not able to protect their lives and property in this border area. In Poonch with cameraman Sheikh Tariq, Nazir Masoodi for NDTV.
Well, we have the Vice Air Chief Marshal Shehzad Chaudhry, Strategic Affairs expert, joining us tonight from Islamabad. Nalin Kohli and Mr. Parthasarathy here still with us. Smita Prakash, the editor, the Chief Editor of ANI, also joining us this evening. Let me just get straight to this, Mr. Parthasarathy. Do you believe these talks are going to yield anything? What is the point of talking? We just seem to be shelling each other every day. There are protests being lodged every day. Is this going to go anywhere?
Look, let's be clear, Nidhi, and if you'll listen me out, why it should be on. I think if you see latest developments in Pakistan, they're astounding. Ministers of the Nawaz Sharif government and a politician like Javed Hashmi have accused two successive Directors General of the ISI, Shuja Pasha and Zahirul Islam, of messing around with internal politics and siding with the Tehreek-e-Insaf. And it has led to the resignation of the minister. I think the tensions, the differences between these are going to become more salient. It sort of brings back to my mind when I was in Islamabad, the row over Kargil. Now, the fact is, you have reached an agreement with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. You know there are these differences. I mean, anyone, of course, any person from Pakistan wishing to say they don't exist, I mean, will be laughed at anywhere in the world. So you have reached an agreement, and I believe that is important because it is the first agreement which we have signed which is so terrorism-centric. It involves 3 layers. Firstly, the NSAs. Secondly, the paramilitary border forces. And thirdly, the DGMOs. Do I expect any breakthrough? The answer is no.
But because it's terror-centric, you feel it should go
No,
ahead.
it should continue, and most importantly, we don't have a direct channel of communications with the Pakistani military. The DGMOs talk to each other on the phone. I don't think that's adequate. The DGMOs should be institutionalized meetings regularly so that the military-to-military contacts are there. Having said that, I do believe, I've seen this sort of firing. This looks like chicken feed compared to what existed between 2001 and 2003.
No, of course.
No, but the fact is, the difference is, this has moved from the valley to Jammu.
Yeah.
And that's where the infiltration comes now. It's not in the valley, and therefore this takes place.
No, so I just want to get Smita Prashan, because Smita, you've actually argued that raising doubts about whether there is any point to having this discussion on Sunday.
See, Nidhi, what I feel is that you have to see the protagonists involved. When you talk about NSA level talks, here we have an Indian NSA who totally is not of the diplomatic mold. He believes in what the reports he gets, intelligence reports on the ground, preferably if he can collect it himself. And he believes in that, and he will go with that. Now it comes to the Pakistani side, and there you have a seasoned diplomat, who will play a round of golf and have a single malt in the evening and then discuss how we go forward with Pakistan.
Sartaj is 86 years old, for God's sake.
He is 86 and he is from that vintage. Remember, he's a peacenik who, from the time he even objected to Operation Gibraltar, right? He objected at that time to Bhutto saying that get inside Jammu and Kashmir and this is what we've got to do out there. But he said economically it will lead to ruin of Pakistan, and it did. And they felt that Akhnur will not result in international border. India will not do anything on the international border. But Sartaj Aziz was right. Bhutto was wrong. They lost 65. Yahya Khan came in and then they lost another half of the country. Sartaj Aziz also was a peacenik when it came to Chagai 1 and Chagai 2 after Pokhran. So here's a man who believes in peace. But look at Pakistan. Where does the National Security Advisor to Nawaz Sharif fit in the security scenario? Nowhere. Because when it comes to security, internal and external, when it comes to dealing with India, it is the army which calls the shots. Sartaj Aziz really has no role to play. So I don't see whether he's coming out here with anything other than what the army tells him to say. So it's going to be one of those tutu meh affairs where India throws a dossier and Pakistan throws a dossier and really nothing gets done.
And I have a feeling the Kashmir word might be uttered quite a bit since it wasn't
But I think
far.
Delhi is prepared with an answer for that.
Perhaps. But Shehzad Chaudhry, it almost seems to a lot of people here that Pakistan is looking for India to call off this dialogue so that they don't have to come here either. Because, the sense here is that there's a lot of pressure from the military not to go ahead with this.
I think one of your panelists made an interesting comment when she said that whatever Sartaj Aziz brings will be from the military and therefore there will be a lot of tutu meh. So it really means that what you're saying, that the politics and the military in Pakistan are not on the same page or do not think alike in terms of India. I think that perhaps gets some sort of contorted in the sense, because if Sartaj Aziz is going to speak the language of the army, and let's wait for Sartaj Aziz to do that when he reaches India and is able to talk to the people after the discussions are over, and you'll have a better sense as to whether it was the army that was talking some sense, or is it Mr. Sartaj Aziz and the army together along with the political government that have been able to bring about an agenda, or for that matter a move towards India, or moving on towards India and trying to resolve our difficulties. I think the difficulty with the Indian mindset that I see sitting here is that they're too caught up in whether the military is aligned with the politics or not. I think it's better to deal with what you have, what is presented before you. For the moment, what is being presented before you is that the LOC is active, foolishly I might add, from both sides without a strategic or a tactical purpose. You have a situation that you can either not talk or talk, and I think the two leaders decided to talk, so good for them and good for the two nations. If we don't want to talk, the point is that perhaps we will go back to where we were about 18 months of the your earlier government and some months of this particular government. So I think the choice is basically left to the saner minds sitting in your studios, as well as hopefully some on the Pakistani side, who need to get together and decide as to what is the way of moving forward on both India and Pakistan.
If, as you say, if the civilian government and the military are speaking in one voice in Pakistan, and there are diplomats here who don't believe in that division as well, but if that is the case, then why escalate things after the Prime Minister meet, and in a sense so it's very close to sabotaging that dialogue. I mean, right now it's going ahead, but if any big incident happens between now and Sunday, it may not happen. I think we all know that's happened a lot in India-Pakistan ties. So what's the messaging here?
The messaging is that within Pakistan, it is the Indian government or the Indian army that is actually violating the LOC or the working boundary, and consistently at that. And you've seen reports on the Pakistani media of people dying, being killed, losing their lives, properties, etc., etc. So that is a reality as well. And you have a similar sort of a perception in India, where you say Pakistan is the one that initiates that. My bigger sense is that there is no strategic or tactical purpose in what either side is doing. Why they are doing that is something that they need to resolve when they get together and talk to each other. Let me also share with you that within Pakistan, there is a huge and a big question as to why Mr. Sartaji is going at all. If, for example, we decide that these talks must not take place and must not go on, well, you are actually satisfying, or you will be satisfying a larger constituency in Pakistan as well, because when we say in Pakistan that each talk or any such interaction must be result oriented and must deliver something, the point is that perhaps we are already saying that since it's not going to deliver anything, so might as well just keep off it, stay away from it. But and how can you talk to someone who doesn't want to talk to you?
Yeah,
so that's the larger issue.
You're mirroring a big constituency. You're right. There are people there who are wondering why Sartaj Aziz is coming here. There are Nalin Kohli, a lot of people here who are wondering why the BJP government, which said talks and terror will not go together, is continuing to pursue this dialogue. We actually haven't even seen a word, not even a tweet from the Prime Minister on Gurdaspur, on Udhampur, and on the civilian killings along the line of control. Whereas he has, wished people happy birthday, he has condemned the blast in Bangkok today, and there is a section that believes that the PM is so determined to have this dialogue on Sunday that he's being very cautious to even condemn the attacks that we've seen. Nalin.
First of all, I think it's a welcome change that this discussion is not rhetoric based on any side. I think everyone who has spoken with a sense of seriousness and looked at whether there are pros and cons to any aspect of it. And I think that's a welcome thing by itself, whether it's from across the border, whether it's here. So moving now next to the point is about the desire for whether the Prime Minister should tweet on something or not. I think there are many wish lists that come up on a day-to-day. Some of them relate to tweets, some of them relate to whether the Prime Minister should speak on this, some of them relate why does he speak on this. I think so on a daily basis the Prime Minister chooses what he wants to say, and he does respond. I think he's always surprised people, those who believe he won't. He has spoken when he has to, and he has spoken unequivocally.
Nalin,
the only thing he can't run on a list on when it has to go.
Nalin, he has tweeted this evening on the killings in Bangkok and condemned that. We had security forces who died in Gurdaspur. We had security forces who died in Udhampur. We had
I heard the question first.
6 civilians who died over the weekend along the line of control. So why the silence? Why is the same BJP government that was quick to condemn Pakistan on the issue of terror and say that terror and talks will not go together, why is the same government now silent on a series of attacks that have taken place, killing both civilians and security forces?
Okay, now having heard you, first of all, is just as I don't think the Prime Minister would be looking at a script coming from this program for when he should speak or not. I'm sure you would also likewise, with editorial independence, not expect any one of us, not certainly the Prime Minister, but any one of us sending you a script of how you should speak and what you should ask. So I think let's respect that. Now let's get back to the question at hand.
You're not answering
the question. You're saying, I'm coming to the question. I'm also making a comment.
There is not even
sorry,
I'm not
I'm
even
also
going to
making
the
a
Prime
comment.
Minister.
No, I'm
there
sorry.
Is not even,
I'm also making a comment, ma'am.
Except for the High Commissioner of Pakistan being summoned yesterday. Nalin, if you want to talk over me, I'll talk over you. The High Commissioner of Pakistan was summoned yesterday, but apart from that, there has been no word from the Ministry of External Affairs on Gurdaspur, on Udhampur, and any of these attacks. Why? Why the silence?
Well, may I also now register a minor protest? I don't recall any of the people being able to finish on this panel their point without being interrupted. I've not even got across my first point. So now ask the question you think which is most relevant, ma'am, and I'll answer that first and then go to the others.
Please answer the question, Nalin.
No, which one? Because there are three different aspects.
I'm asking why the government of India is silent. I'm asking why the government of India is silent on these terror attacks.
Well, I answered you straight on that. I said the government of India will select when it has to. It's not going to take the script from the Congress party or anyone else. The government of India is entitled to. It is not the Congress party asking the question. I said or anyone else. I didn't say that you are the Congress party and I didn't allude to it. I merely pointed out that the government of India will not take a script from anyone else. The government of India will speak when it wants to.
Mr. Prakash wants to come in on that.
Nalin, the impression that one gets is that this is a strategic silence because there's a grand game plan in place for the talks and for a relationship with Pakistan. If at all, then the country is not being taken into confidence. So we presume that there is something which is being planned as far as the India-Pakistan issue is concerned, because it really seems like you govern in prose and you in the opposition it's poetry, because there was such a strident anger towards Dr. Manmohan Singh, whereas now it seems that the Prime Minister is walking the same path as Dr. Manmohan Singh.
Well, Smritaji, there are 4 points to counter this. Let's go one by one. First of all is about, alluding anything to it. I won't, because I can't and I don't know. And that will be the honest impression. I can't speak for what is the strategic thinking, and I'm grateful that I can't speak for what is the strategic thinking. Otherwise, it won't be strategic if any one of us had access to that. Second is about the tone of the BJP and the anger, as you put it correctly, against Dr. Manmohan Singh. Perhaps there's also a difference, that you are looking only at what the BJP said, while ignoring the larger context of how the government of India was performing at that time. And it wasn't only related to Pakistan. It was also abdication on a much more aspect. The people of India therefore decided that something was wrong and voted like that. It just wasn't only Pakistan. It was failure or abdication of authority in multiple areas, no less from economic decision making to no as important as strategic. Okay, so therefore, that is the larger context. So everything has to be seen in context. When you say about parliament disruption also, we come with the same thing. Everything has a context. It's never identical. If there is an identical situation, that question would be justified.
Okay, let me ask all the other panelists, though. Ambassador Parthasarathy, one last word on how do we ensure that, since you are supporting this dialogue, that it takes place and doesn't break down. You can't guarantee anything, but how does it become a constructive?
I can't guarantee anything. I told you that, look, at the height of Kargil, Sartaj Aziz came to India, we talked, and we gauged then, and pretty well by then, that there were simmering tensions between the military and Nawaz Sharif, and we know what that led to.
Yeah.
I sense there are similar problems today. I'm not suggesting that the end result will be the same. So we have to bear this internal factor in mind. Now, therefore, I come back to the basic thing. What I like about this dialogue is you move it to the military, and I sincerely hope that in this dialogue, I don't care whether the NSAs and all meet later, but there is this institutionalized dialogue. I want to go to one more point. You know, right now, as I said, unexpectedly the infiltration has moved to Jammu. In the Jammu sector, we don't have the military deployed, it's paramilitary. The sort of firepower which I learned from our military boys that is coming across is not paramilitary weapons. The sort of heavy mortars being used, and the sort of multiple launchers